everybody. Wasn't going to make another video for a little bit, but when progress happens, I want to document it. Transmission's here. Local trans shop made it for me. Turbo 400. If you know anything about the Turbo 400, its history goes way back. Actually, you can go all the way back to 1940. 1940, every car had a clutch. But in 1940, one vehicle came, no clutch pedal, first automatic transmission. Who is that, you ask? Oldsmobile. 1940, first American vehicle with no clutch pedal. Just put it in drive and go. Fast forward to 1964, and the Hydromatic guys are still in business, and they were looking for a replacement for their current transmission, and these Buick guys had been messing with torque converters, and they decided to hook up with them, and the Turbo 400 was born with the first torque converter that we're used to today. So 1964, it was in the Buick and the Cadillac, and then the following year, it was in the Oldsmobile, the Pontiac, and some Chevrolets. And that transmission was used from 1964 until 30 years later, into the early 90s. In 89, they changed the designation to 3L80, but it was the same transmission. They just changed the name. And then they did a major redesign in 91, and that was your 4L80E. So, you boys out there running LSs with 4L80s, you can thank this guy. This is your granddad right here. Anyway, local transmission shop. They were working on a rear pinion seal for my Trailblazer SS. And I was talking with the owner, Sean, and he was asking me about my project. Hey, how's things going on the 442? And I'm like, oh, they're coming along pretty good. I'm getting ready to send the engine stuff out for machine work. And he says, hey, when's it going to get running? I was like, well, I need to get a transmission first before I can do any of that stuff. I said, you know, what's your recommendation? There's a lot of companies out there. What do you think is a good one for buying a transmission? And he was like, you need a transmission? I was like, yeah. And he's like, I got one in the back. It's been sitting around. He said, I was getting ready to throw it out because no one's asking for it, and I got no use to build it. And I'm like, hey, if you want to build a transmission for me, I'll take that. It'll save me the shipping, if nothing else, to have it sent to me. I said, it's a local guy. I trust you. You do good work. So he said, okay. He said, when do you need it? And I said, hey, there's no rush. I don't even have the money yet for the machine work. So I said, so just take your time. Well, at the time, I had the money for the transmission, and that shorted me the money for the machine work. So I had money set aside in different piles, I guess you want to say, for doing stuff. And I had money allocated to get the transmission, which actually helped out because this was cheaper than getting one like through JEGS or whatever, a TCI or whatever transmission. This actually came in a little cheaper than that, so by about $400 or $500. So I'm happy with that. So he asked me a couple of questions. He knew I was putting the 468 big block in it, and asked me other couple of things. And he was asking about the valve body. He said, I want a reverse manual. He's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I had a Chevelle years ago. I had a reverse manual, and I just love that thing. I just love shifting the gears. It was just the coolest thing. So he's like, okay. So I went on my way, and I said, hey, no rush. Whenever you get around to it, just give me a call. And he finally gave me a call and said it's done. So I go in and pick it up, and then he's explaining some of the things he's done to it. So he tells me, yeah, I did a couple of upgrades to it. He says, first of all, I got you an ATI reverse manual valve body, a 34 element sprag, thrust washer at the back. He changed it to a roller bearing, put some extra clutches in the intermediate clutch pack, did a bunch of things to upgrade it. And he told me, whatever you put in front of that, this is going to handle it. Don't worry about the transmission. I'm cool with that. The only thing he didn't do, and mostly on me, is there's no Speedo housing. So there's no drive gear on the output shaft, and there's no driven gear, and there's no Speedo housing. It's more to do with me, so he just put a cap in it because I didn't know what to tell him. So at the time I hadn't figured out what I was going to do as far as tire size, and so I got all that stuff figured out. So I know what tire size I got, rear end diff, all that stuff. It's done, calculated it out. On these 400s for the BOPs, I can't find a lot online, but what I did find, it sounds like they came stock with that 18 tooth drive gear. And for the diff that I have, the rear end gear ratio and the tire size, with the 18 drive gear, they don't make a big enough driven gear to actually make the Speedo accurate. So did the calculations online, and what I need is a 15 tooth drive gear and a 39 tooth driven gear. So I went to the interwebs and I got all that stuff. So now I'm going to tear the back end, the back tail housing off of this, and we're going to install the drive gear and then install the driven gear, and then I wait for machine work. So let me get this thing turned around and then let's tear into the back end of it, and I'll show you how to replace, if you need to do it, the drive and driven gear on the speedometer on your transmission. So hold on. Okay, so now I got it set up on the bench, and let's go over here real quick and take a look at the parts involved. So you've got the actual housing, and you have to make sure you know exactly what housing you want to get. This is, there's like two different styles. This is the 36 to 39, and then they make a 40 to 45. So depending on what kind of driven gear you need will determine what the housing is supposed to be. So if you've got 36 through 39 in there and you need to go higher than that, you're going to need to get a whole new housing. So be aware of that. This is the drive gear. This is gray. They color coded all of these. And 15 tooth is the gray one. Now, if you need to count the teeth, you never count it. You never count the actual grooves this way, because you can mess that up. From what I understand is you count it from the top. So whenever the spline for the tooth comes to the top, you count it that way. And you count the end of those splines all the way around. You count this one, there's 15 of them, 15 tooth. So this has to go inside there on the output shaft. And the kit comes with everything. So it's got the hold down bolt. It's even got the little retention clip that goes in that holds the gear in place. So let me set this down the camera wise, and then that way I'll get a steady shot, and then we'll start tearing this thing apart. Okay, I'm not going to do a lot of talking because the impact gun's going to drown out my mic. So real quick, it's going to be 11/16 that unbolts the transmission mount, which Sean supplied. This guy put everything on this, dipstick tube, transmission mount, everything. And then we'll go to 9/16, which is going to hold all these rear housing bolts. So let me get all those off. This is a fresh assembly, so everything I think should come apart easy here. And let's see if I can lift this off. Brand new gasket. It goes on dry, so no reason to change it. I'm just going to keep it right on the tail housing. We're going to sit that off to the side. Okay, so now you see the output shaft. Up here, this ring area right here, this one land, that is where that gear is going to be installed. And let me change camera positions for you. Okay, that's a little bit better. Let me turn this around, see if you can see the hole. Ah, there it is. So there's a hole that's machined into that landing. Let me rotate that around to the top. And then you've got your little clip. There's actually a raised portion on this. And what this does is it slides into that hole, and then the top is sprung up, and that holds the gear in place. So we put this in here. that fits right in that hole, and that holds that in place. Okay, so let's take a look at the gear. Gear's got a slot in it here, and that's to give room for that little clip to go in. Let's see. Never done this before. It doesn't look like it's too terribly difficult. I just gotta basically push the sprung part down, so this will slide on, and you hold it in place, and then slide this in. Oh, there it is. So now that's held in place, can't come back out, and it's captured in that slot. So it can't turn side to side, can't come back out. And that's it. I mean, basically I'm not a transmission guy. I don't do transmission work. It might as well be magic as far as I'm concerned. So it's got to be something easy that I can do. And this I can do. So now we've got the driven gear, which this is 15 tooth, this is 39 tooth. So what will happen is when it's on the housing, this goes in and actually mates up with the gears. So as this turns, drives your Speedo. All right, and depending on the driven and the drive and the driven gear, it gives you your calculation, so it makes your Speedo accurate. So all right, now all we have to do is assemble the outside. So let me turn this around so you can see how this goes in. Okay, now that's all that is left is to put in our housing. So I'm going to take a little bit of oil and I'm going to coat this O-ring, so I don't want to damage the O-ring as it goes in. I'm going to do the same thing with this shaft. I bought it off of eBay. It came as a kit. All the seals are already installed. So all I'm basically doing is making sure that when they go in, we don't have any issues. This just slides into the housing. There. That's engaged with the seal. And that's what it looks like from the front. So that's where you're going to screw in your cable drive, if you have a cable drive Speedo. So now that that is in, let's grab some, I'm going to grab some transmission fluid to put on these gears. Okay, we're just going to coat a little bit of transmission fluid onto this gear. If I get it in the vehicle and put it in neutral and have to push the vehicle around multiple times before I actually get it started, I don't want these two dry gears meshing with each other without a little bit of lubricant on it. Just about. Got it. Yeah, I think that's good. So I'm around the back side like so. All right. Now we're ready to just pop this in. The seal fits right in place. Let's rotate this thing because it's got to, there we go, got to be able, all right, that's pushed in place, and then we just put our clip on and bolt that down, and then we're done. It's that easy. So the kit came with the wrong size bolt. This one's actually a little too small for the hole that it's going in. So I just ran out to the hardware store, got the right bolt, which is a 1/2 inch, and had to drill out the end of the clip. The clip, the size of this hole was sized for the other bolt, and I don't know whether it's just multiple variations of this Turbo 400 case, or if they just actually packaged it with the wrong clip and bolt. So either one of those things could have happened. I don't know, but it was an easy fix. So you've got these cast grooves on the housing. So the clip sits in those grooves, and what that does is it lays the fingers up just a little bit because it's a little step higher. And that way when you tighten the bolt down, it pushes the fingers of the clamp down and holds it in place. So let's rotate that, and then we'll just tighten the bolt up. Boom, all done. Not going anywhere. Okay, now that it's done, you can see everything is installed. It's just a matter of reassembling it back to the way it was. Oh, and gasket is on. Gasket's dry. And then we just install our bolts back in, tighten them down to the necessary torque, and you are back in business. Now obviously this would be a little bit more difficult on the vehicle because you're going to be up underneath it, either on a lift or on your back. So that's going to make it a little bit more fun. Plus there'll be transmission fluid running everywhere. But the actual mechanics of it isn't very difficult. I think it's something anyone could do, really. It's not a terribly difficult job, and I don't mess with transmissions. I told you that. Not my forte. But for this, it was just an easy bolt on or unbolt and install and bolt back together. It's not bad. And if you've got the drive gear that you know you need, you don't even need to do that. I mean, it's a very simple job. It's just a matter of taking out one bolt, pull off the clip that holds it on, pull this out, put on your new driven gear, reinstall it, bolt it back together, maybe replace the seals if you need to, and that's it. So that's it for now. I'm going to leave you with this, and yeah, buy a t-shirt if you think about it. It helps quite a bit. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Have a good one, guys.